Young people from all over the globe are joining up to fight for the future.
I'm doing my part.
I'm doing my part.
I'm doing my part.
I'm doing my part too.
They're doing their part. Are you? Join the mobile infantry and save the world. Service guarantees citizenship.
You smash the entire area. You kill anything that has more than 2 legs. You get me? We get you, sir! The only good bug is a dead bug.
I only have one rule. Everyone fights, no one quits.
Oh, God! We're gonna die!
The bugs laid a trap for us, didn't they? Not looking proof of intelligence, isn't it? I thought there might be a brain bug on P.
Starship Troopers.
Starship Troopers was released in late 1997, directed by Paul Verhoeven and written by Edward Neumeier. It was loosely based on a science fiction novel by Robert A. Heinlein. This was the second team-up of Paul Verhoeven and Edward Neumeier. They had collaborated together in 1987 on the classic sci-fi RoboCop. Starship Troopers has a similar style and tone to RoboCop, with its great use of satire and extreme violence. Paul Verhoeven brought in many of the original crew members from RoboCop, such as the cinematographer, effects artist Phil Tippett, producer John Davison, and composer Basil Pardoris. The writer and producer even get cameos during the advert and propaganda promos. Starship Troopers had a huge budget of over $100 million and recouped $120 million worldwide. So from a distributor's point of view, it kind of flopped because the budget was so high for the time. I'm sure it made huge amounts when it hit video, because it spawned 2 direct-to-DVD sequels a couple of years later. One thing that did surprise me when it was released in UK theatres, it received a 15 rating, and once it came out on video, it was pushed up to an 18. I saw it when it came out and I was 15 at the time, and to be honest I was shocked by the level of violence and felt like I'd stuck into an 18. Don't get me wrong, I love the over-the-top violence it has in the film, but they clearly made a mistake with the rating and corrected it once it hit video. The original novel was very serious in tone and came under controversy for allegations of promoting militarism and fascism. Paul Verhoeven claimed he had read half the book and got depressed and gave up. It can be a hard read to some, but the great lengths of military detail the author goes into has been praised by critics. The movie stays faithful to the exploits of the hero Rico and his journey to the planet Klendathu. Its message of fascism is pushed heavily but played for laughs in this film. Paul Verhoeven says his satirical use of irony is playing with fascism or fascist imagery to point out certain aspects of American society. Of course, the movie is about let's all go to war and let's all die, with RoboCop having a similar message about the government's attitude in the 80s. This incorporates a similar use of irony about American society and its attitudes towards war. The casting choices did get mixed opinions. You have Michael Ironside, who regularly plays a bad guy in most movies. In this he plays the leader of the roughneck ground troops, and Clancy Brown playing Sergeant Zim. Both actors are the highlights of this movie. They are pretty much awesome in everything they do. The other cast members are mainly made up of young actors who had previous bit parts in TV shows. Not many of them went on to A-list star status. Denise Richards probably went the furthest, down to her looks I think. Gary Busey's son Jake Busey starred in The Frighteners a year earlier, so he had already done a big picture. Paul Verhoeven wanted to cast loads of young actors to recreate a sense of realism. In the future, humans are a spacefaring federation and contend for planets with a hostile species of large insects known as the arachnids, or bugs, whose homeworld is the distant planet Klendathu. The bugs are depicted as ruthless killing machines, though there is a subtle suggestion that they were provoked by the intrusion of humans into their natural habitat. In the Federation, citizenship is not a birthright, but a privilege earned by those who serve society through such activities as military service. Citizens are granted more opportunities prohibited to non-citizens. Athlete John Rico, his girlfriend Carmen, and his best friend Carl attend high school in Buenos Aires. Fellow student Dizzy is in love with Rico, but he does not return her affections. After graduation, they all decide to enlist in Federation service. Carmen excels academically and becomes a spaceship pilot, while Carl, who is a psychic, is assigned military intelligence for scientific research on the bugs. Rico enlists in the mobile infantry, mainly to see Carmen, but is surprised to see Dizzy, who has enlisted there to be near him. At the mobile infantry training, the brutal but effective career Sergeant Zim heads the recruits. Rico is promoted to squad leader and finds a friend in Ace Levy, but his hopes for continued romance with Carmen are dashed as she desires a career with the fleet and serves under Rico's high school sports rival, Xander. After a live fire training incident that results in the death of one of Rico's squad, he is demoted and publicly whipped. He decides to resign and call his parents, but the call unexpectedly drops. An asteroid launched by the Arachnids has obliterated Buenos Aires, killing millions, including Rico's family. Rico takes back his resignation and remains with the infantry as an invasion force is deployed to Glendathu. The first strike on Glendathu is a disaster, with heavy casualties. Rico himself is wounded and mistakenly labelled KIA, causing Carmen to believe he is dead. Rico, Ace and Dizzy are reassigned to the Roughnecks, commanded by Rico's high school teacher. Dizzy and Rico begin a romance and the Roughnecks respond to a distress call from the planet P, where they discover a deserted outpost has been overrun by bugs. The distress call is a trap by the Arachnids who swarm the outpost. Dizzy is fatally wounded and dies in Rico's arms, as they are retrieved by a rescue ship piloted by Carmen and Xander. Rico and Carmen reconnect at Dizzy's funeral, where they encounter Kyle, now a high-ranking intelligence officer. Kyle reveals that the reason for the ill-fated mission on P was to confirm the existence of an intelligent brain bug. Directing the other bugs and showing that the bugs have a desire to learn about their human enemy, he field promotes Rico to lieutenant and gives him command of the Roughnecks, ordering the infantry to capture the brain bug. This is one of the movies from the 90s where the special effects still look very impressive today. It uses a combination of CGI and miniatures to great effect. It was nominated for Academy Award, but lost out to Titanic, which is fair, I believe. Titanic had fantastic effects. There was stiff competition that year, but it's a shame it lost out. During the movie's release, there were promotional featurettes discussing the effects and the process, and Paul Verhoeven's methods of getting the actors to react to the bugs that would be later finished in by CGI.
What we're trying to achieve is a palpable feeling of weight and mass and lethal quality that will allow them to feel like they are moving quickly but still have scale, that they aren't like little bugs, that they're 17 foot long.
Many of the bugs' performances were created by traditional animators using a direct input device, or DID. Movements were then fed to a computer model so that a creature's animation could be built, tested and refined far more quickly than with a series of keyboard and mouse clicks. Making the bugs appear to be in the live-action locations meant that director Paul Verhoeven's job was tough. He couldn't put his camera or actors just anywhere. They had to be carefully placed so the aliens could be added later, at exactly the right point in the picture. For those not involved in the film's post-production, it was hard to sympathise.
Technical baloney.
Verhoeven even had to do a bit of play acting himself, just so he could get the reactions he wanted from his cast of soldiers.
Let's go again. In all the rehearsals, we try to give them an illusion and some knowledge about what the shot would look like and where the enemy was coming from, how high the enemy would be,
Stop!
what kind of moves it would make, how fast it would move.
Keep it up and down a little bit.
Also added later were the huge space cruisers, dropships and support vessels that represented the Federation's fleet. Unlike the alien insects, most of the military craft were physical models, refitted and repainted as they became more damaged. Although digital ships were used in the background, the spectacular amount of detail seen as this cruiser breaks apart would have been far more difficult for a computer to produce. Trying to stay within a $100 million budget and a tight release schedule proved impossible for Starship Troopers. However, a longer post-production period meant that 4 different effects teams were allowed to combine their work seamlessly with what the director had already produced in the real world.
It's a really collective effort, and it comes from so many different sides, and you have to rely on the people that are good.
The score was composed by Basil Poledouris, who once again teams up with Paul Verhoeven. This was his 3rd feature working with Paul. He provides an epic military march and a familiar love or say human theme for the characters that does sound similar to Robocop's Alex Murphy Q. It's not identical by any means, but there are moments where it sounds similar. It's a very good soundtrack, but not Basil's best work. It was released on CD at the time of the film's release. About 35 minutes of music was made available. I do believe an expanded version was produced, but I haven't managed to track it down. Starship Troopers still has a huge fan base. Considering the direct-to-DVD movies were pretty awful, especially the sequel, there was also spin-off related media such as the Japanese anime cartoons, which stayed very faithful to the original source material. For me, the satire and comedy still hold up really well in this movie, and the visual effects are still incredible. What they achieved was ahead of its time. There are movies that have been released in the last couple of years, and a year later, after their release, their effects look rubbish, but this still manages to impress, especially in high definition. The movie cleverly critiques governments and how they pass on false or weak information. The troops are sent to Klendathu with little training or no information, and are virtually wiped out in a number of hours. And these sort of exploits have happened in reality, with the previous world wars and the current war in the Middle East, with troops going to battle with little information or lack of training, and the movie is very smart with its propaganda adverts, misleading its characters into thinking they are winning the war and they are superior. Critics have panned the wooden acting and the cheesy sort of dialogue the characters have, and I always thought it was done on purpose, and it's funny to watch. It's like Saved by the Bell in space. But for it to be watched repeatedly, the acting can be a little off-putting, and it takes away any sort of serious tone the film has remaining. With Paul Verhoeven's other movies such as Robocop and Total Recall, I've watched them far more times than Starship Troopers. I don't want people to think I don't like this movie, which is far from it, but when I ask my friends when they last watched the film, they usually reply not for a long time, even though they are huge fans of it. So it's hard to pinpoint what its major faults are. One big issue which Roger Ebert raised was the length, and I do agree with him. It is a bit dragged out in areas, and it takes nearly an hour for them to invade the alien planet, and for any real action to occur, which some may say is good, because it gives time for character development and strengthen the main story. But because you don't really care about the characters too much, you kind of want the filmmakers to cut down the drama and speed it up a bit to improve its pacing. There were a number of deleted scenes which included more of Rico, Carmen and Xander in their sort of love triangle. It does explain a little more about Carmen's struggle with her feelings, but they clearly left it out because it dragged down the movie. If you haven't seen this film before, I highly recommend it. It uses satire and its use of irony in a very smart way. The effects haven't dated at all, and it's thoroughly entertaining. Just don't take the acting too seriously and enjoy it for what it is. Its messages about war and its great propaganda adverts are very relevant even today, and shows how effective it can be in corrupting people's minds. It's great science fiction, but obviously fans of the book were upset by the changes made in this film, which is understandable, but that shouldn't distract you from its great visuals and humour.
Klendathu, source of the bug meteor attacks, orbits a twin star system whose brutal gravitational forces produce an unlimited supply of bug meteorites in the form of this asteroid belt. To ensure the safety of our solar system, Klendathu must be eliminated.
Someone made a big goddamn mistake.
We're under attack, so we need retrieval now. Get out of here now! I say kill them all!
Starship Troopers.